Line Books present the audiobook of Overpopulation, the hidden agenda for global reset. Scene 5. My favourite catchphrase. He stopped at a bottle shop to buy another bottle of vodka, then returned to his room. As he listened to the noises coming from each home, he sank shot after shot. The more he drank, the more his heart pained. Why did I agree to this stupid project? In the morning, he awoke with an empty bottle on the bed. Water from the tap was icy cool, and it helped to splash his face. He hadn't been impressed with the breakfast restaurant, and so examined the menu on his bedside table. "My favourite!" Olivia's voice leapt out at him. He had zoned out of the constant mumbling of Finnish, and so hearing an English phrase caught him by surprise. She repeated the phrase over and over again in a cheerful little voice. He snapped to attention, and for want of meaning decided to visit her that morning. Olivia lived west of Helsinki in a small home along the main road leading to Takome, the main town in a peninsula that spearheaded into the Baltic. He drove all morning and all day across a sparsely populated, low-lying landscape to reach 669 Taktominte, her house, which was set back from the road, hiding within a woodland of tall coniferous trees. It was a modest, pleasant enough home with orange-clad tiles on its upper floor, outer walls, and a low-inclined roof of dull but grey tiles. 2 cars were parked in front of the house, and a driveway ran without fence or gate perhaps 100 metres from the road to the door. Banks picked up a signal and listened in through their television. The family were home. They sounded content. Their Finnish-speaking frustrated Banks. He wanted to knock on their door and ask if they would like to go to London as a treat, but knew he couldn't. He wondered what he had expected to discover, wasting so much time to simply park outside her house. Without resolution, he began the long drive back to Helsinki. The day had revealed nothing. He had been driving all day and hadn't even seen Olivia. Back in his room at the Radisson Blu Plaza, he opened another bottle of vodka and flicked through the television channels. They included all the usual international news channels from the USA, UK, Deutsche, France, China, Russia, and Middle East. The big news of the day was the Red Band riots across Saudi Arabia. In the morning, he woke early and went down to breakfast. Because Finns are the world's largest consumers of coffee, Banks was keen to try out their coffee. He found amongst the selection an Italian coffee he had never seen, called Aiello, which he drank black with a spoonful of sugar. It turned out to be very smooth. He ate a milk-based oatmeal porridge topped with a spoonful of berries and a slice of rye bread accompanied by cheese, cold cuts, and relish of sliced cucumber and tomato. Back in his room, in need of a touchstone with something familiar, he thought he might watch the BBC News. As he clicked through the channels, he heard, "My favourite!" the very words Olivia had repeated. It was a children's character called Greedy Bear, a BBC children's television programme that aired on Finnish TV. He immediately fed into Olivia's home. Sure enough, he could hear her, and the BBC children's show in their home. From the television set camera, he saw Olivia sat hugging a soft toy and staring in wonder at the television set, obviously enjoying herself. As Greedy Bear spoke his catchphrases, "My favourite," and "That's why they call me Greedy Bear," Olivia repeated them. Banks had an idea. He went downstairs and badgered staff on reception for details of when the Greedy Bear show was on TV. He was told that it aired weekdays at 7 a.m. and repeated at 5 p.m. He had a hunch, but felt it needed confirming. The day seemed to lag. He went for a drive, ate out, then returned to his room to wait. Sure enough, at 5 p.m., Olivia sat in front of her television set, watching Greedy Bear with a soft toy in her arms. Each time the character said his catchphrase, she repeated, "My favourite." She appeared to be very happy, and talked along to her soft toy in a voice she appeared to imitate from the Greedy Bear character in the show. Banks didn't bother visiting the third candidate. He returned to London immediately to instigate his plan. Scene 6. BBC Greedy Bear. Who do we know at the BBC? Banks wanted to launch a competition to find Finland's #1 Greedy Bear fan, with the prize being a meeting with Greedy Bear. Henry DeLonge had connections with the BBC, and they persuaded the Children's Television Marketing Department to allow a competition to run in conjunction with the Finnish television broadcaster. Funded by DM, it would run before, during and after the Greedy Bear show on Finnish TV. To make sure Olivia responded, her parents' social media channels were targeted relentlessly. Sure enough, within the week, Olivia had entered the competition. Her parents were informed that Olivia had won the prize, being a chance to meet Greedy Bear at BBC Studios in England. There followed a tense wait, as after a week the prize had still not been accepted. Banks decided to run one more advertisement in which an actor pulled the name of the winner from a hat and read it out loud. "The winner is Olivia!" Listening in to the response, it was clear that Olivia had not previously known that she had won. Acceptance of her prize followed soon after. The prize was first-class travel to London for the winner and their family, including a visit to the BBC studios, where the winner would meet with Greedy Bear. Scene 7. Project Spiron is go. Olivia and her family spent their first night at the Ritz Hotel on Piccadilly. The following morning, their Finnish-speaking guide, who had been assigned by DM, treated them to a guided tour of London, lunch in Covent Garden, and a show on the evening, suitable for young children. On their third day, they headed out west to Waddesdon Manor, where they were accommodated in an impressive family suite, normally reserved for dignitaries. The next day, they would visit mock BBC studios in Aylesbury, where they were told Greedy Bear was recorded. The professor had constructed his theatre for the assimilation of Olivia and Spiron there. Scene 8. A School for Scoundrels. Olivia's parents sat in their suite, in awe of the opulence and magnificence of Waddesdon Manor. They did not dare leave their suite without their guide. It were as if they had found themselves in the 19th century, the world of the Tsar. Meanwhile, in the smoking room, Lord Martin paced back and forth. He was expecting the arrival of the Marquis of Zanzibar, which made him agitated. "Philip tells me she is 6th-generation Forester, and by all accounts most agreeable." He was informing Henry and the Professor, who had both just arrived from London. "I am assured that she is of obedient stock, with ancestors wanting little more than to tend to their timber. What is more, Boynton, she is that most beautiful of things, untainted." "Does she have a name?" Name? Who cares about names? Where is that blasted Marquis? I sent the helicopter an hour ago." Meanwhile, Olivia's family peered through the small leaden glass windows of their suite at the sight of 2 helicopters landing on the lawns. Olivia ran to the window. "Can we go and see the helicopters?" Having landed on the lawns in front of Waddesdon Manor, the helicopter engines wound down like giant whistles, running out of steam. A hullabaloo of leaves and dust blew into the air, causing waiting staff to resettle their dress as they made a line for the reception of their guests. The door to the first helicopter popped open, and grey suits descended to the lawns to make their obligatory security checks, after which they adopted statue-like poses in wait. 5 minutes later, when the king had not emerged from the helicopter, a message was sent to Lord Martin via his staff. There was a knock at the door to the smoking room. "What is it?" barked Lord Martin. "My lord, the king anticipates your presence for his arrival on the lawns," Staff made a diplomatic bow and departed. Henry's eyebrows arched, predicting Lord Martin's sentiment. "Blast it, man, he is no longer a king. Zanzibar is a vassal state of Tanzania." "They are a semi-autonomous state, my lord. One has to indulge them." Lord Martin lit a cigar and called in Simpkin. "I'd like to watch School for Scoundrels." "Yes, my lord." "And invite George." "George, my lord." "My best friend, George, from the bank. We'll go on then. Call him. Stop standing there like a mannequin." Simpkin made the call while Henry looked bored. Yes, I see. Yes. He said that he is in meetings with the government, and that he is running the Bank of England, and that he is rather under the pump, and that he sends his most sincere apologies, and that he cannot make it." "Under the pump? Under the pump? What is this world coming to, Henry? Can you believe it? I shall have to watch it with Henry because he has no friends." "I do have friends," insisted Henry. "Who?" "Young Billy. I have known him since he was a child." "Billy? He is my friend, not yours. The Martins have known the Hunts for more than 600 years. Besides, how can he be your friend? You are twice his age, you silly man." "And you are twice my age. Come to think of it, haven't seen your wife in a while. You've become a bit queer, a bit of a queer fellow since your wife left you, haven't you?" "She did not leave me. I left her. It was over a decade ago." "Ha ha! Listen to him, Simpkin. His wife left him, and now he has no friends." The Lord began to sing, "Henry is a loser, a loser, a loser. Henry is a loser all day long." Olivia and her family stood on the lawns at a discreet distance from the helicopters. Along with staff, they were waiting for someone to emerge. "Why are we all standing still, Mummy?" asked Olivia. 20 minutes later, Simpkin returned to the smoking room. "My lord, the king apologizes for disturbing you, but states that he is still waiting." "I feel quite faint. This cigar doesn't agree with me. I think I shall lie down." Another 30 minutes later, Simpkin knocked on the door to the Lord's bedchamber. "My lord, the king asks that I inform you that, since you are not feeling well, he has graciously agreed to return to London." Yes, all right. Tell him I'm coming." Scene 9. Helicopter Reception. It was a warm day, and the sound of crickets could be heard over the hush of all in wait. Lord Martin and Henry walked across the garden, past a line of staff stood by the helicopters in wait for their guest. The door to the helicopter sprung open, and a tall, slim, pale-skinned Omani Arab emerged. Dressed in a body wrap of vivid orange and yellow stripes, he paused to wave at those waiting. Despite being the 12th generation to have dominion over the archipelago of islands in the Indian Ocean called Zanzibar, he was not above a sense of pomp. He stepped gently onto the grass and flashed his pearly white teeth. His loyalty to his superiors in the Tanzanian government did not weaken his heart for his former British rulers. He loved nothing more than to visit Britain in traditional costume, even if his security did look like models from Musbros. "What a clown!" muttered Lord Martin beneath his breath. As the king descended to the lawn, Lord Martin approached him. "Ilziad!" he boomed, extending his three-fingered salute. His guest mirrored the gesture, and they pulled together in a back-slapping hug. "Ah, George, so fine to meet you again. Why, oh why, oh why, oh why shall we leave it so long between our meetings? More's the pity you did not arrive earlier, for we did partake of tea with your old colleague Boyington." "The professor?" Ilziad looked genuinely surprised. "No." "Yes." "No." "Yes. Good heavens, man, did you not hear what I just said?" Lord Martin's lip twitched as he sensed that he was in for a bout of one-upmanship. The Marquis laughed affectionately. He was happy to wind up his adversary. Before settling into royal duties, the Marquis had studied beneath the professor and shown a healthy aptitude for chemistry. "Come, come!" Lord Martin swept an arm around the Marquis and led him up the stone steps and indoors. Henry was completely overlooked and traipsed behind. Once in the great hall, they stopped to admire the surroundings. The Marquis decided that it was apropos to make a regal proclamation. "How long would you say it's been, George?" "Oh, it must be 23 years?" "Yes, 23 years. How time flies, eh, George?" "My word, yes. Where is Langton? Langton?" The Lord's dog was nowhere to be seen. "That's unusual." "Well, it's good to be back, George, after 23 years. You know, you haven't changed a bit." "I should like to say the same of you, but you appear to be a good deal taller." "Yes, I'm sure I was taller than you before." Lord Martin tapped his legs. "Basketball player." "The things old Boynton can do, eh?" "I should like to talk with him about my adenoids." "I'm afraid that won't be possible. He is my physician," said Lord Martin. "Oh?" The Marquis was momentarily crestfallen, as if the main purpose for his visit had just been scuppered. Just then, a young girl ran up and huddled onto the Marquis's side. "Oh, and this is Abigail, my niece. She is 7 years old." "Yes, well," the Lord didn't have much time for young people. Just then, Lady Elizabeth appeared at the top of the circular staircase in a shoulderless ball gown. It caught the Marquis's eye, and Lady Elizabeth began her act. "Darling!" Her voice echoed through the great hall. She began her descent of the staircase, with her 3 maids attending to her long train. She imagined herself to be a princess, arriving at the ball. All of a sudden, one of the young maids released a loud scream. "Ah!" A cool shrill bounced from the walls. The young maid's hand had been impaled by the heel of Lady Elizabeth's stiletto. Under her weight, it had sunk through her hand and onto the stair. Lady Elizabeth looked down at her with contempt, cowing her to silence. But the pain was too severe, and she continued to howl. "Your Majesty, how wonderful that you could make it!" The girl's moaning was now so loud that it filled the entire hall. Next, the Marquis attempted to ignore it too. "My Lady Elizabeth, what a picture you are! Such a... ah!" Maid's screams were now at an inhuman whimper. "Ma'am!" Another maid dared to intervene. Blood soaked into the taffeta, but Lady Elizabeth ignored her too. "You have arrived on such a beautiful day, Elizabeth." "Please, ma'am," pleaded the girl, who was no more than 20. "Oh, really? We rehearsed this." Lady Elizabeth waggled her leg, and the girl's hand came free. She fainted on the stairs. Meanwhile, Lady Elizabeth descended the staircase to join King Ilzad and her husband. "Abigail, this is Lady Elizabeth." Lady Elizabeth smiled at Abigail. "She's got blood on her dress," stated Abigail. Lady Elizabeth bent low and cupped one of the girl's cheeks in her hands and squeezed it hard. "Go and play outside, there's a good girl." Staff rushed in to whisk Abigail away. Note: the maid's hand was stitched at nearby Stoke Mandeville, after which her employment was terminated. She was given a copy of the secrecy agreement she had signed at the beginning of her employment. Outside, Abigail spotted Olivia and her parents and ran over to meet her. "Hello, I'm Abigail. What's your name?" Pleased to find a child for Olivia to communicate with, Olivia's parents stood back and allowed a dialogue to commence. "My name is Olivia, and I am 7 years old." "I'm 7.5. I go to school at Chewak Bay. Where do you go to school?" "My mum drives me to school." "You talk funny. Do you like chewies? I like chewies, especially strawberry ones. Would you like a chewy?" Staff communicated with Olivia's parents through their guide. It was decided that they allowed the girls to play together. In the meantime, Olivia's parents were offered access to the spa and recreation part of the manor. Having built up some trust in their guide, they agreed to leave Olivia with the guide and spend some quality time relaxing. Billy was describing Tin Eye's defence of the embassy during a FIPA meeting. "It's night time. He's on his belly, crawling across the lawn, right? So there are security everywhere. Guns, knives, tripwires. It's pitch black. He feels the tip of the wire through the blade of grass he is pointing from his mouth. He isolates, diffuses the deadly effective device, and then... Hold on." Banks received a call from the tour guide accompanying Olivia and her family. She mentioned Abigail's niece and the King of Zanzibar. "All right, I'm coming over." Banks stood to leave. "Hey, I haven't even got to the best part yet." I know. He gets inside and chins the Sultan's wife. "You told me before. I have to go." Banks made a quick exit. Abigail and Olivia ran across lawns and landscape gardens that dropped through the woods surrounding the manor. Unlike Abigail, who was fluent in English, Olivia just had a few words, but it didn't seem to stop them. Abigail began to sing. "Orange and lemon, say the bells of St. Clement's. You owe me 5 farthings, say the bells of St. Martin's." Olivia laughed and hummed along. Skipping down some stairs, Olivia was first to notice a bird that had its wings damaged. "Ah!" She bent down and was about to cup the bird in her hands when Abigail appeared above her with a large stick. Olivia looked up. Abigail raised the branch in both hands above her head, then brought it down on the poor bird repeatedly. "Ya! Ya! Ya! Ya!" emphasizing each stroke with a loud call. Her eyes fired up as she repeatedly smashed at the bird with all her strength. "There! It's dead!" Olivia was shaking. Abigail took hold of her wrist. "It's only a bird. Come on, I'll show you something." Olivia was too shaken to react. Abigail's grip was so firm that Olivia had little choice but to follow. They arrived at an old wooden door. "Shh!" announced Abigail, with a finger to her lips. She opened the heavy door, which led to a small, dark, stone-lined utility room. Inside was stocked with garden implements, and in the middle of the stone floor what looked like a sleeping dog. Abigail nudged Olivia forward. "Here, hold." She handed the branch to Olivia, removed a small tin from her pocket. She removed its lid and approached the animal. Once close enough, she emptied what looked like powder all over the dog, then kicked it awake. The dog opened its eyes and instantly felt the burn of pepper. Abigail ran for the door and once outside slammed it shut, leaving Olivia plunged into darkness. Outside, Abigail sniggered to herself as the dog snarled and barked, and Olivia screamed and screamed. As the commotion rose above mere screaming, she walked off, singing to herself, "When I grow rich, say the bells of Shoreditch. What will that be? Say the bells of Shoreditch." 20 minutes later, staff rushed into the sauna calling for Olivia's parents. "Please, come immediately!" An hour later, Lord Martin and Banks were on a link to the mock BBC studios, where 22 and the Professor were expecting to assimilate Olivia. Spirits were low. "What are we to do?" "We must delay," stated Banks. "No, we cannot." 22 pleaded for Genesis to go ahead. "I have everything ready. Spiron must assimilate. Now, today." "But Olivia is traumatized," explained the Professor. She practically had to bite the dog to death to survive." "Think of her state of mind." "Trajectory will be lost if we do not assimilate now, and Spiron will be dead." "Please, Boynton, 22. Lord Martin sank his head into his hands. "Can we have some sensitivity? Langdon was the sweetest, dearest, most darling little doggy I have ever had." He burst into tears. Banks gave the final blow. Her parents are on the next flight home. Olivia is out of the question.
Philip is right, the professor agreed. A girl so traumatized so recently would cloud the soul of Spiron. What we need is the very essence of innocence. If we build Spiron on anything less, we might face a future beyond our worst nightmare.
Just then the door opened, and in came Lady Elizabeth, holding hands with Abigail. They were both smiling sweetly.
Abigail and I have just been making daisy chains.
Olivia and her parents returned to Finland. The Marquis gave permission for his niece Abigail to be assimilated, believing it might curry favour with the professor, whose help he sought for his adenoids. So it was that within the hour the professor, Banks, 22, and various white-coated assistants congregated in the mock BBC studios built in Aylesbury in what looked like a surgery for computers. Abigail lay on a bed, fast asleep. Wires connected to a head cap and arm brace. She was ready to assimilate with Spiron.
So, 30 minutes, you say, stated Banks absent-mindedly.
26 minutes and 45 seconds, precisely, confirmed 22. Any side effects?
No, she won't feel a thing. She will be anaesthetized and pass away quietly.
Sorry, did you say pass away? It kind of implies that she will, die?
Yes. That's right.
Sorry, are you suggesting that this is going to, the King of Zanzibar's niece?
No.
Oh, thank God. For a moment I thought, he is not the king, he is the Marquis. So she is going to die?
Yes.
No, stop it. Stop this right now. Not now, Philip. Turn this off, or men in white coats pounced on Banks and clamped his arms behind his back. Hey! If we told you, you wouldn't have cooperated. Banks was muscled out of the room. 26 minutes and 45 seconds later, 22 emerged from the assimilation room. Genesis is complete. He looked as pleased as a midwife after a troublesome birth. Is she?
Yes.
How are you going to explain this to the Marquis, then, eh? Demanded Banks.
I'm not. You are.
Scene 10. Flashback. The Final Solution, 1998. Charles Banks was a troubled man. He viewed the world as a sinister place full of dark purpose. Familiar with the apparatus of finance and propaganda, he saw how people were enslaved to lies, threats, and deception. It bothered him that so many allowed themselves to be ruled by so few. There had to be a reason. It plagued him. Maudlin thoughts subsumed his logic and interfered with his judgment. He detached from family and work colleagues until, one day, he found out that he had lost the knowing. That day, he told 22. That day, he disappeared. At Delange Martin, all reference to him was eradicated. His fingerprints to clients' records were wiped. His past inputs deleted. The man who had influenced company policy for more than a decade simply vanished. His legacy was denied. If his wife had not rang constantly, asking about what had happened to him, his name would never have been mentioned again. As far as DM were concerned, Charles Banks did not exist. Had never existed. Until, months later, he returned. Charles Banks returned to present his company with a manuscript which, he claimed, would solve all the problems in the world. A manuscript he called The Final Solution. Banks had read The Final Solution over and over and had at last formed an understanding. In its text was a solution, but one that would only work if executed according to his father's instruction, which would require great stealth and diplomacy to execute.